This is America Daily, bringing you the best in truthful news updates and in-depth reports happening now.
Welcome to America Daily. I'm Jessica Beatty. Today we revisit an interview we did with filmmaker Curtis Bowers. His first documentary, called Agenda: Grinding America Down, was released in 2010. The film follows his investigation into America's cultural shift towards the left. His second documentary, called Agenda 2: Masters of Deceit, goes into more detail about how certain groups are trying to destroy the United States from within. Mr. Bowers explains the meeting that started it all.
Back in 1992, I was in graduate school and college and studying, and an older man asked me to go to a meeting. He had heard that the Communist Party USA was going to break off a new group, and he was just curious of what they were doing, and he had studied communism his whole life, so he was very interested, but he told me I can't go because they might recognize me, because he'd written a lot of books on the evils of communism over the years, and so I said, I'll go for you. So I went to this meeting. It was at the University of California, Berkeley, and the new group they were starting was called the Committees of Correspondence, which is a very patriotic name in America because our founding fathers had a group called the Committees of Correspondence. So I went to the meeting, and during that meeting for 3 days, these different Marxist and communist leaders laid out a plan of how they wanted to take America down from within. They were disappointed what had happened in the Soviet Union and that they just couldn't keep up building military as fast as America was. And so they were having to go to Plan B to take over the world more through subversion. But they just laid out this plan to take down our families, to take down our economic system, and to take down our morality, because they knew those were our strong points. And so for 3 days, all day long, they talked and talked. They were almost like preachers in the way they would pound on the pulpits, and they talked about America. It was hard for me as a young man to listen to, as if it was so evil and so unfair and so unjust. And I couldn't even comprehend it. I was like, where are these people from that they don't see America is doing a better job than anybody else is, justice and freedom and opportunity and stuff. So anyway, it was a very interesting weekend. And that weekend, when I left there, I just thought to myself, I don't think they're going to be able to do these things they've talked about. And that was in 1992.
Bowers elaborates on the root plan they discussed at the meeting, which is how to weaken the family structure.
They've always known, as everyone that wants to control the people knows, if you can take down the family structure in any country, the country will start to collapse. And the more a country collapses, the more it needs big government. So it's easy for a government to expand and control people because they need it to. And so that was their primary thing. The family, they said, we have to continue to work at, and they'd already been doing it since the 1930s, but they said we need to continue to work at getting the women out of the homes and away from those children so we can get them at a younger age. And we need to keep pushing the idea that marriage between a man and a woman is old-fashioned. People shouldn't waste their time with that, and people should go do the things they want to do in life instead of getting married and having families. And so that's what they wanted to continue to push, to kind of help our families keep collapsing more and more. Economically, they said, the only way we feel we can take America's economy down where it will collapse is if we get behind the environmental movement. Now, the environmental movement today is very big, but it wasn't in 1992. In America, it was kind of thought of as just a bunch of crazy people chaining themselves to trees out in the forest and stuff. But they said if we get behind the environmental movement, I think we're going to be able to create enough regulation and red tape so that the businesses can't survive in America. They have to leave the country, and so America will become poorer and poorer on the inside and eventually collapse. And then the last thing they said, and a lot of your listeners might know, America, even despite what everyone is saying today, was founded upon the principles from the Bible. Most of our founding fathers were Christian men. That stuff was important to them. And to be a society and to be people that did what was right because God was watching, because God cares, made our country able to give so much freedom to the people because they knew we don't have to control the people. God will. God will look down and they will feel convicted when they do what's wrong in their conscience. And so we're going to encourage them to be Christian families and to believe those things and trust in the Lord. And then we know we can give them all the freedom we want to, and they're not going to abuse that freedom because they feel responsible to God. And that's what had made America so wonderful. Our enemies and the communists realized that. And at this meeting, they said, we've done a good job at turning people away from God and things, but we need to finally remove all the final little roots of morality. We want them to just do whatever they want to do, and there's not worrying about what anybody. And they said we can uproot the traditional values of America if we can get Americans to accept homosexuality. I was just sitting there going, what? They felt if we would accept homosexuality, we would accept that as equal to traditional marriage of a man and a woman and families and things, that we wouldn't have any standards left. And so that's the three main things they talked on and on about, and then how they were going to do that through the school system and through Hollywood and through the media and things and through the universities, how they wanted to get, they've been going into the universities, they've been going into the seminaries and the churches since the 1930s. And they said, we got to keep doing that where we want to be the ones teaching the teachers in the teachers' colleges. We want to be the ones teaching the preachers at the seminaries. Even though they don't believe in God, they go, we've got to get in there and be the professors at the seminaries. So we can teach those professors the Bible's no good and just tell some good stories and things. Anyway, it was just very interesting how they unfolded all this strategy.
Bowers expected mostly young college students to be at the meeting, but he was surprised by who was actually there.
Since it was on a college campus, I thought, it's probably going to be just a bunch of college kids that are all kind of, stirred up or whatever, but it wasn't. It was all 50, 60, and 70-year-olds with briefcases and suits on. I mean, it was totally different. I had some radical T-shirt on that said something, whatever, silly, or there was about 1,300 or 1,400 adults there, and it was a serious meeting. And one point we didn't cover yet, but one thing that later, then in 2008, when I started thinking about making a movie, one of the things that motivated me to, as I went back and studied, who were the people at that meeting with me and who were they? I started to study the committees of correspondence and all that stuff. I realized, wait a minute, as I started to read through the names, I couldn't remember all the names, so I looked through who was at that meeting, and I realized several of them were in President Obama's cabinet. And I realized, wait a minute, those weren't just some kooky whatever people. Those people are powerful and influential. And that's when I realized, when I looked through the list of the people at the meeting with me, and then I looked where they all were today, and many of them were either advisors to the president or in the White House with him, I realized this is a big thing. This is not some little thing.
Bowers tells us why it wasn't until many years later that he actually started taking the meeting seriously.
My feeling when I left the meeting was, I don't think they're going to be able to do this. I wasn't that worried about it. I thought, even the environmental movement, and I was 25 at the time, and I remember thinking, how in the world would you use the environmental movement to destroy our business? I mean, just some of the stuff just didn't make sense to me at that time. But, of course, 16 years later, when I was a representative, I started to realize, wait a minute, because legislation was coming across my desk, and businessmen were calling me saying, please don't pass this environmental thing. It's not going to help the environment, but it's going to destroy my business. And all of a sudden, I remembered that meeting because I hadn't really thought about it much. I'd gotten married, was having children, and I owned a restaurant. I was doing different things. I'd kind of forgotten about the meeting until all of a sudden I started to realize, wait a minute, that's the things are happening they talked about. And that made me realize, whether I want to believe it or not, those people have a lot more influence than I think they do. And maybe communism didn't just die when the Berlin Wall came down and all that stuff. And so that's what caused me to really start studying what is going on.
Coming up next, how someone with no filmmaking experience was able to create an award-winning documentary. Welcome back. Today we're revisiting an interview with filmmaker Curtis Bowers. He produced Agenda, Grinding America Down, and Agenda 2, Masters of Deceit. His first documentary won the Jubilee Grand Prize at the 2010 San Antonio Independent Christian Film Festival. Mr. Bowers explains why he decided to drop everything and start making films.
Well, I am a Christian as well, so that has influence over me. I believe the Bible, and I started to feel convicted that maybe God wanted me to expose this. And so I started praying about it. I go, what should I do with this stuff? And I kept feeling like I'm supposed to make a movie. And I'm like, God, I've never made a movie before. I don't know how to do it. And I just, after enough prayer and talking with my family, I realized I think God wants us to make a movie. So we started studying cinematography. I homeschool my children. So we started studying film. We started studying editing. We started studying all that as part of school. And once we studied it enough, we practiced with our cameras and lights. And one day we watched back all the interviews we had done that day just of each other in the home. And they were pretty good. And we said, I think we're ready to go. So then we started calling people to get interviews and everything. So it was a neat experience for the whole family to learn that one family can make a difference. If they work together and they're trying to do something big that it's hard to do, my children learn, you know what, you can make a difference if you'll stand up for what's right, if you'll educate others, and if you work hard at things, God will bless those efforts.
He gave up his job to work on the project full time.
The representative thing ended, and then I just said, okay, we're going to do this full time so we can get it done. And so, no, I didn't have a job or anything. We had to use our savings that we'd saved up. We had to use that to live on for 2 years. It took 2 full years to make the movie, full time, working every day, all day long for 2 years. And then we were finally finished.
We asked how his family reacted to the decision.
That's a good question, too. My wife looked at me and said, sweetie, are you sure you're supposed to make a movie? And again, she's a Christian too, so we know there's things bigger than us. And so it was not. And I said, yes, sweetie, I am. I know this is what we're supposed to do. So it was wonderful, and they all just got behind me, and we were totally focused on it. It was just a neat experience of just working through that and getting stuck in places where we're realizing, boy, this is tough when you haven't done this before. But slowly we would just keep working hard and praying, and all the details slowly just kept coming into place.
We asked Mr. Bowers about his children's role in the filmmaking process.
It was just us. Nobody else helped. My children and my wife and myself did all the filming and the editing and then the distribution of it. We traveled for years around America in a bus. We got a bus. We sold our home and got a bus and traveled and had showings and meetings all over. We think there's at least 10 million people that have watched the first movie so far at our showings, free showings we've had and things. So we were thankful that so many people were able to be informed by the film.
After they made the first movie, they sold their house and went on a tour.
We had it for a while. We got a bus. We found a used tour bus that would work for us, and we started traveling the country. And then even last year, when we finished the second film in 2016, last year, we actually then did sell our house And we went for the whole year. Last year, we spent 10 months on the road in America. We were in 40 different states and had a different meeting almost every night in a different town for the entire year because we knew it was an important year with the elections coming up and stuff. We wanted to educate people to what's going on so they could be informed voters.
Here's what he had to say about people's reactions to his film.
We would have showings and maybe 200-300 people would be there. And I remember they'd sit through the film, especially that first film, and at the end, we'd turn on the lights when it's over, and I'd walk up there to talk to them. And as I looked at them, people, a lot of them had tears coming down their face. They're staring at the floor. They can't believe what had happened to our country. And so many of the older people would come up and said, we knew something was happening. Our whole life, America has been changing. But now when we see your film, we understand why it was changing, why what was going on was going on. And so it was very neat, just a neat experience with them to sit there and be the one that helps them see what is really happening. And then thankfully, too, we are so thankful, they don't seem to be like depressed about it as much as, hey, we need to do something now. And I'm like, yes, that's right. That's why I made this. I didn't make the film to discourage people. I wanted them to understand our situation is serious. But the reason it's serious is because we haven't been responsible like we should to preserve our freedoms, to preserve our families, to preserve the American way of doing things and the principles that made this country great. And so I love that when they are motivated to start getting involved in what's going on.
We asked Curtis if anyone disagreed with his film.
Oh, yes. I mean, there's people, they have been so brainwashed that anyone that disagrees with you, hates you, or it's a hard time talking with them because they just instantly say, oh, you're just hateful, or you're just this, or you're just that. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I want the best for everyone. But we have to start with the truth. If we have a lie in what we believe, that doesn't benefit anybody. And so, yes, some of that happened, but thankfully most everything has been so positive. Thousands and thousands of people emailing, thanking us for making the movie, thanking us for helping them finally understand what's going on. So it's been 1,000 to 1 positive over the negative, and we're grateful for that.
Curtis explains what impressions all those interviews made on him.
Those people I interviewed in that film, the first one, Agenda, a lot of them have already died since then because they were older. They'd been studying this their whole life. And it made me very thankful for them because even though no one seemed to listen, they had tried from the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s to wake people up to how there was an agenda to just kind of corrupt us and cripple us from within. And so I was very grateful to them. But it also made me kind of realize as they all pass off the scene, if I'm not going to step up in their place and educate others, and if my children aren't going to do it, it's not going to get done. So we all have a responsibility. We all love and enjoy this wonderful country, but very few of us do something for this country to help preserve it and to help protect it, help it continue, help to pass down to our children why we believe the things we do. I think that's the number one reason America has so changed over the last 50, 60 years, especially in the areas that it has not changed for good, is because parents didn't spend enough time with their children teaching them the history of our country and why we do the things we do, and then comparing those to the way other places do things so that they know the differences and they know, oh, we do this for a reason. And I think we didn't pass down enough to our children, so most of the people in America lost their children in the 60s and 70s. They went over to the Marxist movement to take down this country because they believed it was evil because their parents hadn't really taken enough time to teach them, no, it's a wonderful country. It's not perfect, but it's wonderful, and we can keep working to make it better, but we need to be thankful for it too.
Coming up next, why we aren't taught about some of the deadliest lessons in modern history. Welcome back. Today we're revisiting our previous interview with filmmaker Curtis Bowers. His films investigate why certain movements are trying to weaken the United States from within, and how exactly they're trying to accomplish that. We asked Mr. Bowers why more isn't taught about communist campaigns from the Soviet Union and communist China.
That's an important question. I truly believe the reason it's not taught like it should be, this horrible evil that has done so much damage and killed hundreds of millions of people. Just even what's going on in China now. My heart loves China. I feel so sorry for these people that are being forced to do things and benefit the government instead of being free. And we in America here think, oh, it's okay if they're doing all the work for us. We don't have to see them in slavery. And it makes me, every time I have to buy something from China, and I try not to, it makes me sick to my stomach because I know that man wasn't free to make that product, or most of them are, it's not being treated the way they should. But I think the reason we haven't been taught that in America is because back even in the 1920s, as you study this, you realize that Marxist influence in the 20s and 30s started to enter into all of our universities and colleges, and the faculty and the people that were writing the curriculum for the schools. They were very friendly toward those Marxist ideas. They really thought, the good of the many outweighs the good of the few. And in America, we never believed that. We believe, no, each individual person is priceless. We don't worry about the many. We worry about each individual, and because they're made in the image of God and they're priceless. But those ideas have been bought now, where I think if you did a survey of people in America 35 years of age and under, and you asked them, do you think America should pursue a course of action based on the idea the good of the many outweigh the good of the few, I bet you'd 85% of them would say yes. And they don't know that is Marxism. And when it's implemented from the top down, it's slaughter and abuse of the very people you were supposed to be blessing. And the socialist Marxist ideas do not work. We're going to see a Europe collapse over the next 2 decades completely because they have a socialist system that does not work, because they have rejected the blessings of children. They're not having enough children even to sustain themselves. And then they've allowed people to come into their countries that do not believe like they do and are not contributing in the same way, and they're going to collapse. So we're going to see all of Europe collapse over the next 20 years, and it's going to be very sad, but that happens to any group of people when you do not pass down who you are, why you are who you are, and then you keep maintaining generation to generation. And the Marxists knew if we get into the schools, we get into the colleges and universities, we will be the ones training the next generation. So we will be able to tell them what to believe. And so we will control the country. And it's exactly what has happened.
We asked Mr. Bowers if he sees a link between progressive movements now and the meeting he attended in 1992.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not the average person there. They wouldn't know anything about that. They're just, a lot of them have been given bad information, so they're pushing this cause because they think it's a good one or whatever. But the people that are instigating, that are getting these movements going, if you look, I studied in detail just the environmental movement. I wanted to know something like that. We all care about the environment, but as I studied that movement, I thought, who started this? I wanted to know if it was a good movement that got hijacked by bad people, and I found the whole roots of that movement are Marxist. I mean, even Mikhail Gorbachev, who was out there in the San Francisco area, before he stepped down, right when he stepped down from the Soviet Union, he started an environmental group, Green Cross International. Well, you think, does he care about the environment? He sure didn't when he was head of the Soviet Union. They were one of the greatest violators and rapers and pillagers of the environment, anyone. So I know he doesn't care about the environment, but why is he acting like he does? And then I started to study that. I mean, he's the one that wrote the Earth Charter, which is supposed to be the commandments for the future. A communist dictator wrote that. As I dug in more and more, I realized, oh my goodness, this is something they know everyone cares about the environment. So they know if we can package the environmental problems to look like they're things that we want to have happen, we can motivate everyone to do what we want, which is, what are they trying to accomplish through the environmental movement? They're trying to destroy capitalism throughout the world. And so because they hate that, so they thought, hey, this is the perfect vehicle to do that. If we can convince people that there's a huge problem and a solution to the problem is to regulate, tax, and stifle capitalism, it will destroy it. And then we will impoverish the people throughout the world. Poor people are very easy to control. They hate rich people. So they use people to accomplish their goals by making them believe whatever they are trying to do is something noble and good. So most of the people you're talking about, no, they don't. They probably wouldn't even know what Marxism is. They don't think they're doing anything evil, whatever. They've just believed the lies that they've been told that this is how you solve this problem or this is how you solve that problem. But as I've studied each thing I've ever taken the time to study, like the environmental movement I just brought up, as I took a year to study every little branch, every root of that tree, every root ended in a Marxist communist philosopher or philosophy. I realized, okay, it wasn't ever about helping the earth be green and beautiful and the very things they're pushing. I don't know if you know Dr. Patrick Moore or not. He's the man that started Greenpeace, which is was an environmental group. I went and interviewed him up in Vancouver, and I said, Dr. Moore, why did you have to leave Greenpeace, the group you had started? Why did you have to leave them? And he told me because the Marxists took it over when the Berlin Wall came down, and they were wanting to do things that actually was going to hurt the environment because all they really cared about was destroying capitalism. And I had to get out because I realized, wait a minute, this is no good. And this is not even helping the environment. He told me, if we actually do the things Al Gore and those people are talking about by limiting carbon dioxide and doing those things, it's going to hurt everything that is green. It's going to hurt the planet. The very things that they say are going to help it are actually going to destroy it. Anybody knows carbon dioxide is plant food. It's fertilizer for everything that is green. And they built their whole agenda around carbon dioxide being a pollutant. It's not a pollutant. It's the most vital element in all the atmosphere for everything that is green. And yet they call their movement to stop carbon dioxide the green movement. It is a total lie. It's unbelievable to me. And right now, the levels of CO2 in the world, about 425 parts per million, are 1/4 of the optimum level for everything that is green. So that's just one example of a movement that has been captured to use people to accomplish their ends.
We hope you found our interview with Curtis Bowers interesting. Do you think there is an effort to bring America down from within? And do you see it playing out in politics today? You can let us know what you think on our America Daily Facebook page at AD Top Story of the Day. Once again, I'm Jessica Beatty. Thanks for listening to America Daily. Until next time.
This is America Daily, bringing you the best in truthful news updates and in-depth reports happening now.